All right, Dan, I broke you up. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. No worries. So basically, when you're talking about the eyes, I think it's 70% of the sensory information that comes in through your body, it's going through your eyes. I've learned from a lot of great people. Dr. Highcotter is one of them that Chris talks about. Dr. Peter Gillette is another one out of Texas. Like I told you before, Dr. Jack Cruz. A lot of these people have some great information. And I think when it comes to sports performance, if we're thinking about reaction time with eyes and that's all that it can offer us, I think we limit what it can really do for us. Dr. Peter Gillette always says this: sensory before motor. If you want some type of motor output, make sure your brain has great input, okay? And those input avenues are going to be things like how you breathe, how you balance, and how you see, okay? Chris talked about the horizon. Well, that horizon, definitely 70% of that sensory information set by your eyes and your feet. So when Chris talks about the foot and the mechanics and all that stuff of the big toe function, what about the way the foot perceives the ground and is lying on the ground to set your horizon? So many things go back to the eyes and or the feet when it comes to changing your posture. The goal of any rehabilitative intervention is to re-engage those neural systems rendered dysfunctional from injury and disuse, okay? When I look at that sentence, that's pretty powerful, but I look at disuse rather than injury. Your brain always has to know where you are in space and where your head is in relation to your body and which way is up. Has to. If it doesn't, you're in trouble. Things are going to change. So whenever we talk about some of the things that we've learned, we always talk about where we've come from, okay? Started in powerlifting, went to Olympic lifting. At that point in time from Olympic lifting, we were basically looking at, okay, central nervous system, we're training the brain. But were we really talking about that? I think we were talking more about, you know, the force absorption part of turning on all motor units and making sure it was maximal. And we were saying that part of it created that central nervous system drive, okay? So then, you know, I went down the Jay Schroeder path. And what a lot of people don't know about the Jay Schroeder path is they were using an electric modality called the ARP. Some people do, some people don't. But the reason that they could sell the ARP was because of a guy named Dr. Jay Piatella. He was out of Minnesota also. He was a chiropractor, and he was dabbling in neurology way back when. And some of the things that he was doing was what he called imbalance, where he was putting people in balance from left hemisphere to right hemisphere. It's the first time people were talking about balancing the brain out. So when I spent some time with him, we were actually starting to do some eye exercises to stimulate different parts of the brain to seek that balance of right side, left side brain. And then, of course, we got into the DB Hammer stuff. So if you look at the overall evolution of the learning process, like I was learning things in the gym from Jay and from DB and from all these people, and we were trying to fit it into a movement scheme, which most power lifters and Olympic lifters didn't do. And then the whole Franz Bosch thing came in. But on the other side of that path, in my gym, I have a neurological chiropractor that works out of there that's trained by Dr. Carrick and I think it's Bach. One of the guys' name was Bach. So as we started to do these different things, we started to realize that you could get huge performance gains in the gym from doing some of the neurological aspects of clinical neurology, functional neurology, and all that stuff. So it was kind of like a playground. Doc would be on one side treating somebody, and I'd be watching some of the things he was doing going, wait a minute, if that made my shoulder feel better and pain-free, why wouldn't it help somebody throw a ball harder? And then we started playing with different exercises and how we can impact the nervous system that way. So then we were really talking about brain training. So some of the things that you see listed, the powerlifting, Olympic lifting, the central nervous system stuff, Jay, all those systems touch on some fundamentals. We talk about tendons, the foot, joint positions, ground reaction forces, different positions, eccentrics, the intent behind the motor learning part of it, and motor control. All those things come from all those different histories of training. And I don't think any one person had it all together, but when you start to pick out some of the great qualities in each one of those systems, I think that's where we've arrived now. So for me, true brain training is the end game. Okay. And I don't know if you guys were following last night on Twitter, we have people that always question, well, if it can do this, how do you save that pattern? Or how do you, if you can change the tissue, then how can it be different tomorrow? And to me, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense when you say it like that, because when we're in the weight room, we spend 8 weeks trying to put 10 pounds on our bench press. And if you get it, then what do you do with it? You're going to continue to train it. So you can take those motor qualities that you learned and the strength that you gained and get better. Same thing with your brain. So training is basically putting stimulus in the body. Okay, stress is cumulative, pain is weakness, and it becomes a coordination issue. So if you look at anybody who hurts their ankle, they limp. That's a coordination issue. Into an area, all these things are putting a stimulus into the body, and then there's going to be a response. So when we're training the eyes, we have to take into account, we're not just talking about the acuity of how I see. We're talking about visual resolution, your peripheral awareness, which might be, you know, Chris was talking in the beginning, it's basically based off threat. And your eyes are the first one that will dictate threat and what is threatened. And if your peripheral is closed down, think about the threat that builds in your body.
And I think this is one thing that Dr. Zielinski does different than every other eye doctor, because when you go to the eye doctor, what do? They stick you in the machine, you see what you can see, you know, what's the lowest thing you can see, you know, better left eye, right eye, all that stuff. Now I'm going to poof the air into your eye and then put some drops in and see how you do. Most people only cover one. She covers that. The first thing you do when you see her is you have to come in with an eye exam by her people. But she does 2, 3, and 4. And I think that's the part that we need to be at. And you need to find eye doctors that will be at those parts. But they cover that so little in eye doctor optometry school because it's difficult. And you can't put it into a manual for people to learn and apply to everywhere else.
And think about it like this. So when we were in the weight room learning, it was how much weight can you lift, right? And then all of a sudden someone came out and said, well, you know what? If you can squat 500 pounds and you're running really fast and your foot hits the ground, your foot is hitting the ground at, you know, you got to get off the ground in less than a half a second. All these things happen so fast. It's really not about how much weight you can lift, because you really don't have time to apply that force. So then we start thinking, oh boy, so now it's force absorption. So if my body hits the ground, my leg hits the ground, when I sprint at 6 times my body weight, so I'm 200 pounds, that's a lot of weight that's being absorbed, a lot of force. And then I got to do it on one leg. So training turned and it took a change. Just like eye doctors, they're looking at how well you can read that Snellen chart. Well, there's a lot of other things that go into your eyes when it relates to the brain. Things evolve. So now we're talking about things like reflexes, different colors, okay? Saccadic eye movement. We're talking about smooth pursuits, gaze stabilization, convergence, divergence, binocular vision, adding the vestibular system to it. All of a sudden, you realize, wow, we're not just talking about one thing, how well I see or how well I make a shape out. So much more to it that has a profound impact on the rest of my body. So
yeah, and you're going to go back and define all those things, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it as we go here.
Okay.
So I forget where I clipped this out of, but Under normal condition, the brain combines the sensory information from receptors in the feet with information from the inner ear and the visual system to generate motor solutions in movement patterns. If you read that, I want you to think about what we do in the weight room and what we do as coaches. And nowhere in there did it say how much weight you could lift. But what I do see in there is those three things, the receptors on the feet, the inner ear, and the visual system, have a huge impact on motor patterns. Okay, so every time your foot hits the ground, your eyes are developing something, whether it's that horizon that Chris talked about. When you hit the ground with your right foot, my eyes are going right, my head's going left. All these joint interactions take place. So way more than lifting weights, dropping off boxes, and all these things are happening when we're moving. Okay, so compensated movements at some degree alter posture, while not necessarily efficient, are intelligent adaptations of the central nervous system based upon the sensory feedback it receives. That's just a little bit more of a complex way of what Chris just explained. You change your horizon, it's going to change your posture. Think about that for a minute, and as we talk a little bit more, you're going to go, oh, you know what? It's so simple to understand, and it's not voodoo, it's science.
You know, it makes me think, like, if you're playing another team, you know, what if you put your numbers one number higher than the other? I think like the Seahawks did that a long time ago. Someone had waves on their things, but if you're playing against someone and they're trying to create a horizon based on what they're looking at, which are your numbers, what would happen if you made one number higher than the other? They're going to have to, because what do you tell? Watch their hips. They can never move their hips, but you got to create some kind of horizon. You create something different like that, it's going to change their way they look. And from a micro standpoint, they have to rebalance to what they think their horizon is, and they're going to decrease power.
Yep. All right. Well, and we'll get into some of that stuff, but let's go to light therapy. The first thing that can hit your eyes in the morning.
Here, Dan, I'm changing out
Yep.
just to be in the mood. I'm putting on blue
I can't see
glasses.
right now. Oh, nice. So light therapy. And I got all my light therapy stuff from Dr. Peter Gillette in Texas, who treats the eyes all the time. Very similar to what Dr. Highcotter does. But again, you can spin with the eyes anywhere you want. So a method that therapeutically sending light through the eyes in order to stimulate brain function. Light through the eyes enables us to open up neurological pathways into specific brain structures, okay? The application of light can affect the entire bloodstream through the circulation and elimination of toxins. So one of the things that Dr. Cruz came up with, so I don't know if anybody on this site remembers the cooling glove. Anybody remember the glove? I think Richard Sherman wore it. Put the glove on and it cooled the body at an alarming rate.
Oh, wait, so what it did is you put your hand into a sleeve, and then there was a band that went around your wrist, and it trapped the blood inside the hand, and then it cooled the blood down. And you'd put your hand in it for 2 or 3 minutes, something like that. And so then when you were done, the strap came off, and then that allowed the cooled blood to flow through your system, so you would cool down actually faster. Dan actually has one.
Yep, had one. Okay, no, I still have it. So here's the cool thing about that. So Dr. Cruz looked at that thing. I think Harvard developed it, and I
Stanford.
think Stanford. Yep, because
Dave said that.
That's why.
That's why Richard Sherman had one, because he went to Stanford.
Yeah. So Dr. Cruz went one step further. So he made this device that not only did it cool the radial artery, it also sent in purple light, which made the cool and the light go faster to your core. So that was pretty cool. So it was a use of light and the cold technology. And I think he sold it as the Quantlet. I don't know what quite happened with that, but if you listen to him talk around the research around it, it was unbelievable. And I tell you, I got a lot of great results with that glove. The only problem was it was cumbersome, and like Richard Sherman, you got to wear it on the sideline.
To take that one step further, someone came out with a new sauna that does increase the heat in there, but it also has a light impact where it will shine a certain color of light depending on what you're looking for, and it ties in with a tone. So now you've got tones and lights that are having impact on your body with the added heat. And I can find the name of that. Dan, someone asks, is there a type of light training for indoors, warm, cool? Is there a recommendation for a type of light for training indoors?
No, be outdoors. It's the best way. Being outdoors is the absolute best way. But protecting yourself from some of that blue light indoors is the way to go. That's Dr. Cruz has a whole spiel on that. He talks about how most of the people who do CrossFit are constantly under blue light lifting, and that's why they're getting hurt. That's his philosophy. I mean, again, when you're talking about these things, you're going to get extremes on one end, and then you're going to get people on the other end who are like, no way, that doesn't work. So as you hear Chris and I talk, we're somewhere in the middle because the eyes are powerful. So light placed on the brain is more effective than light placed on the body. If you can remember research a long time ago about shining light on the back of your calf muscle for melatonin levels, if anybody remembers that. So Peter Gillette was more like, the eyes are cortical tissue. So they're like your brain. You're looking at your brain. It's the only way we can see a human brain without actually taking the skull off. Okay. So he talks about it as being like the apples on a tree, where the roots are the vascular system, and the outward expression of what's going on in your brain is your eyes.